So if you can only stay with me for 1 minute, I'll answer your question right now. Should I spend $400 to $600 on a bow sight? If you're serious about archery, if you're serious about hunting, probably. You probably should, because it's really good. Like, it's really good. We're gonna start out with the cons right off the bat. It's expensive. Like, it starts at $400 and then it goes up from there. So if you want the longer dovetail, the 6-inch dovetail, or you want a bunch more pins in it, yeah, it can get expensive. Con number 2, and this is always gonna be my complaint about kind of standard bow sights, it uses sight tapes. And I freaking hate sight tapes because it seems so antiquated and stupid that we've not figured out some other way to do this. The fact that I've got to dial my bow in this way and then use a little piece of tape and then run the thing up and down, it just, I felt the same way about the Spot Hogg. Sight tapes. Please someone come up with something better. I want to be able to shoot a lightweight X impact arrow that's 350 grains and then move all the way up to some sort of FMJ, just heavy ass arrow, and I want to be able to shoot both of them and go through the range. The little wing nut that you use to release the adjustment knob so that you can actually move the slider up and down, I wish it was on the back side instead of the inside, so that I could literally just kind of move my hand real subtly in one spot, hit that lever, and start wheeling down or up. I don't know why, it just kind of feels like my preference. Like, I just don't know why I have to move my finger over. I think it's the part where you have to actually lock it off. The next thing is the adjustment knob for the slider. It sticks out really far. I don't know why it has to be that far. It seems like if they moved it back on the actual sight, that you could really run it in, like really make that thing a lot more narrow. Just one less thing to get hung on as you're walking through the brush and the bush, stuff like that. I mean, if you've got a big heavy glove on, I guess it's nice that it's out that far. But again, I think I'd rather have it kind of pulled back and then in a little bit more. And then the last con is the actual pointer that points to the different yardage on the sight tape. It's kind of a dark red, and I'm actually gonna go get some like bright orange or bright green fingernail polish and paint that thing. Because in low light, it's kind of hard to see what's going on there if you're trying to make an adjustment. Maybe that's me and my old man eyes. I don't know. So that's it for the cons. I mean, it really overall, those are super nitpicky points. It's a really good sight. Like, it's really good. I've really enjoyed this. I changed from the Spot Hogg Fast Eddie. I did a lot of research on the other kind of high-end scopes. I didn't get to test out the HHA Kingpin yet, but that's on my list. Man, you go everywhere, all the forums, and people love these things, and there's a reason. Man, it's just high quality through and through. So with that said, let's get to the pros of this sight. Pro number 1, it is super adjustable. First axis, second axis, third axis. I'm gonna go through the details later on how to adjust every little thing on there, but trust me, if you want to do it, it's going to do it. Anything that you actually want to adjust on a bow sight, this one can do it. Just fast forward through this and then you can get to like how to adjust the third axis, because I'm sure that's why most of you are here anyway. Nothing moves or rattles or vibrates. Like, if you have everything locked up tight, nothing. And that was my biggest issue with the Spot Hoggs that I had. Both of them, for some reason, when I'd run the dovetail out pretty far, I would just have this vibration that would come, and it was a little bit of a sound every single time. It just drove me crazy. The next pro, the machined aluminum, looks badass. They call it their wing truss dovetail, and not only does it look badass, but it actually serves a function. They've peeled off as much weight as they could without compromising the stability of the actual dovetail. The adjustment on the slider knob has just the right amount of tension. You release that wing nut and actually get that thing going, and there's just something really satisfying and tactile about how much tension there still is in it. It doesn't make any noise. There's no grinding. It doesn't feel like it's gonna slip. I literally have forgotten to reset the wing nut plenty of times, shot an entire round, and nothing's moved. It's not like one of those things where you forget to set it and you go to full draw and all of a sudden you just kind of see the scope housing just kind of dropping. It doesn't do that at all. It's a great amount of tension on there, but it's almost perfect. It just feels so nice and tactile. What a good word that is, tactile. They did a bunch of research into how to get their fibers to mount into, just the tiniest little bit of aluminum in the front end of these things. It literally looks like the fibers are just floating inside of that housing, and the pins can get super tiny. So you can go from probably a heavier pin that you'd want for hunting all the way to just a tiny, tiny, tiny little guy. And it literally looks like it's just floating out there in space. Probably my favorite part of this, just from a ooh, science, is the photochromatic shell that they have over the fiber optics. So literally when you are in the dark in the morning, this thing is going to be clear. It's going to be letting in as much light as possible, and then as the sun comes up, it starts to turn purple. And what it's doing is it's actually shielding the light so that you have a consistent amount of pin brightness throughout the day. So in theory, early in the morning and late at night is going to be the same brightness as the middle of the day. I'm sure there's a little bit of fluctuation, but for me, it has never been noticeable. I shot an IQ sight for a couple of years, and I always felt like the IQ was so bright. I would literally take a piece of duct tape and put it over the inside when I was shooting indoor tournaments with it because it was just so bright. It was just getting blown out. And I'm not getting any of that with the Montana Black Gold Pro. So that's it for the pros and the cons. Let's actually get into all the different adjustments and what makes this sight so functional for hunting. So I've got my dovetail run all the way out as far as it will go. It's literally on that last little dimple. And the reason I wanted to do that was to get those pins to spread out. So as I'm target shooting, I can see that sight picture is really open and really clear. I actually made the top pin my slider so that basically I've got 30, 40, 50 is what I've got it set at when it's just kind of stock, just kind of standing there. Because the area that I'm whitetail hunting in right now, that's as far as I can shoot. Like if I'm shooting past 50, I'm literally putting arrows into the woods. So I'm obviously not going to do that. So since I've got it run all the way out, those pins are nice and spread out, and that top pin becomes that slider. So with this heavy arrow, the 520 grain arrow that I'm shooting right now, with the standard fletching where you've got one fletching up, I can run it out and basically get 104 yards out of this slider sight. Then if I flip the arrow over, I can get another 10 yards out of it. So I can get out to about 114 yards. Dude, the sun is so bad. I think I have to go back somewhere else because it's really bad. Lighting's horrible. Shit. Just got a call from one of my handymen that a house that we're working on got broken into last night. And they stole the stove and the fridge, but they crowbarred open a door and they scratched the hardwood floors all to hell. So I guess we'll just go finish this review over in the living room while we wait for the police.
You may wish to call back at a later time if your call is not urgent. Thank you.
Si su llamada no es tan urgente. Gracias.
We'll get somebody out there to you as soon as we can to make the report.
Great, thanks very much. Break in B-roll. Great Thanksgiving weekend! This is how you adjust the windage. You undo this little Allen screw here, and then you twist this dial that's on the right-hand side, left and right. Pretty simple. The most complicated one to find is actually adjusting the entire housing up and down. So it's this hidden little Allen hole. It's tucked down in here, and then this little dial on the bottom that says up, that's the one that you're gonna dial up and down in order to adjust the actual slider housing. To adjust the pins, if you want to adjust the top one, you loosen these two Allen screws on the top just a little bit, loosen them up, and then the dial that's directly underneath them, you start to move that, and the pin will go up or down. Now let's say you want to move the entire bank of pins, whether you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever you've got. You can literally loosen all of them up at the same time and then start twisting that dial, and it's going to move all the pins at the same increment evenly up or down. The nice part about that is when I went to Colorado and the elevation was so different, I was able to just simply adjust my housing up slightly and then adjust the entire bank of pins down so that it was still set inside the scope housing exactly how I wanted it. All right, so let's adjust the first and second axis here, and then we'll go home and we'll adjust the third axis. Your bow has to be straight up and down. It can't be canted either way, and it has to be vertical, or you can put the actual scope inside of a vise, but it has to be level. So the best way to get that level is to make sure that this dovetail right here is good and level. So what you're gonna do with the fancy torpedo level that you have bought off Amazon, you're gonna put that torpedo level right here. You're going to then loosen these two Allen bolts right here. Now in the past, this whole entire housing, when you loosen these, would have just started flopping around, but one thing they changed for this year is they've made it micro adjustable. So now you've got this silver Allen screw on the other side here. You loosen these up, and then you're actually adjusting that cant with that Allen screw so that you can get it perfect. And your goal is, by adjusting this, you get that bubble in that torpedo level perfect. That's sitting right up on top here, right on top of where the sight tape goes. So that's the adjustment of the first axis. When you tighten these down, kind of alternate between the two. You want to make sure that you're not over tightening one, because what'll tend to happen is that'll get hunkered down and it'll actually move. It'll move you out of level again. So alternate back and forth between the two. Kind of like you do on your car tires where you're kind of doing the star pattern. I guess that's a bonus tip in case you didn't know that that's how you're actually supposed to do the lug nuts on your tire. Star pattern. Doing the second axis is pretty easy. So you're gonna leave that torpedo level in place here, and the goal is to make this level match this level. So you undo these two Allen bolts right here, and then you rotate this green plastic, kind of like the outside of a clock, like if you were twisting the outside of a clock. You twist that around in place so that this level matches this one. And when that happens, then you're gonna tighten these down, again, alternating back and forth. This doesn't adjust very far because it generally doesn't need to. So it's gonna be a really minor adjustment. So that's how you do the first and the second axis. Let's go home to do the third, and I'll show you kind of a little trick back before I got a bow vise on how I would actually do the third axis on my bow. Basically, you're backing your bow, putting the cam in a corner, and then if you have carpet or if you have a rug, you can just grab a rug, and then you knocked on the string, and then you put them down into the carpet. Now you have a nice little angle where the bow's leaning forward that's gonna give you the ability to adjust the third axis. Now, this is the part that you need to buy, a little speed level. If you don't have one of these, you need one. Everybody needs one of these. Just put it in the junk drawer. I promise you'll use it for something else other than this. What you do, nice and simple. Put it next to the bow like this. Take a rubber band. Wrap it around there. And then work the bow until this top level that is running perpendicular to the riser is level. And then check it with the bubble for your third axis and then make your adjustments. You're gonna loosen this screw here on this side. Now, one that I missed in the video, there's another Allen hole on the top of the sight. It's the one that's sunk down in, and it's almost directly above that one that's on the inside that you loosen up. You loosen those two. You're gonna move the third axis by moving this large Allen that's on the outside of the scope. What you do is you start to twist, and you'll notice that the bubble's gonna slowly move. Now, you shouldn't have to move this very much, and they actually put a big piece of sticky, nasty tape over the outside saying don't move this more than a half a turn either direction. And I imagine it's because something horrible would happen, some sort of disaster, a catastrophe, if you will. Once you're done with that, everything's set up. First axis, second axis, third axis, and you should be good. So when I actually started dialing mine in, what I went out and did, I loosened it up, I brought it all the way up to the top, and I brought the housing as far up as I could get it as well, knowing that what that allows me to do is when I actually use this in the field for distance, I can drop it all the way down, and I'm going to get the most amount of travel possible, since this is as high as I can get it. So I also then brought the top green pin, which would be my 20 yard, or what I set at 30, I brought it right into the middle of the housing. And I took my first shot, and I took it close. It was like 10 yards because I don't want to shoot off the target, and then I backed out. And what I realized was I'm going to have to raise this out of the center just a little bit. And again, I want my target picture as open as I can get it, which is one of the reasons I went with a 3-pin, not a 5 and not a 7. So I've got that top green pin ended up being raised up just a little bit. So this thing is literally maxed out as far as this 50 pin is dropped as far down as I can get it, so that it gives me the most amount of clearance before I'm actually hitting the fletchings on the arrow. That's probably one of the coolest parts about using a slider sight, is the ability to have everything in the housing be nice and fixed. So in a hunting scenario, like for me with whitetail, I'm not adjusting my slider. It's a nice fixed sight, kind of like your traditional old school sights, like, you know, probably everybody started with. But then you add that slider into this, and for target or for going out a lot longer distances on a follow-up shot or something like that, it just makes such a huge difference. Such a cool feature.
Ooh, science.
See that? Clear again. Ooh.